Update. Proceedings of the 15th session of the sham trial of HE Dr. RIEK Machar and 7 other detainees from the SBLM/AIO. October 20th, 2025. Today, the so-called Special Court on the Nasir incident held its 15th session at Freedom Hall in Juba, continuing the politically motivated trial established by the SBLM-IG against First Vice President HE Dr. RIEK Machar Tini Durgan and other senior members of the SBLM/AIO. During today's session, the defense revealed further substantive procedural violations that have marred the proceedings from the outset, namely 1. The search conducted at the residence of the first vice president and the other detainees was not authorized by a search warrant issued by the public prosecutor and the court. 2. The seized electronic devices, phones and laptops belonging to the first vice president, HE Dr. RIEK Machar, and the other detainees were sent to a private company in Pretoria, South Africa, for data extraction and analysis. This constitutes a blatant circumvention of official channels for international judicial cooperation, particularly in the absence of any technical or judicial assistance. Agreements between South Sudan and the Republic of South Africa. 3. The individual responsible for transporting the devices to South Africa was Mr. Dennis Dumo, a diplomat working at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, who is not a member of the investigation committee. During cross-examination, the defense questioned the lead investigator, Major General Basilio Thomaswani, about the whereabouts of 6 radio communication devices confiscated from the first vice president's residence. These items disappeared without being recorded in seizure reports or presented as evidence before the court. The investigator initially stated that all confiscated items were in the custody of the National Security Service, but, under persistent questioning, retracted this claim, admitting he did not know their exact location. When asked whether a statement had been taken from H.E. James Adhoc Oye, governor of Upper Nile State at the time of the incident, given his position as head of the State Security Committee, where the incident occurred, the investigator replied that they deemed such action unnecessary. The defense also inquired whether the investigation team possessed a sketch map, diagrammatic representation, of the Nasir incident showing the scene and positions of the newer armed youth, Aka White Army. The investigator responded that they had no such sketch of the incident. When questioned about whether the team had visited the incident site, the investigator stated they had not, citing security concerns. Additionally, the defense asked about the whereabouts of 4 members of the first vice president's security detail, Brigadier General Mark Didi Yoa, Brigadier General Par Dang Yud, Brigadier General Kwok Dang Yil, and Major Hoth Chiak, who were arrested last March. These individuals were neither released with Dr. Machar's bodyguards in September nor included in the trial of the 8 accused. The investigator reported having no information on their location. Concluding today's cross-examination, the lead investigators denied sending the seized devices, phones and laptops, to Kenya in an initial attempt to extract data, an attempt that was ultimately rejected by the Kenyan, before they were later sent to South Africa. We wish to inform our members and the public that Lieutenant General Gabriel Duplam, Acting Chief of Staff of the SBLA-IO and Deputy Chief of Defense Forces of the SSBDF, has been discharged from the hospital today after miraculously recovering from a cerebrovascular accident, stroke, he suffered last week. His condition continues to improve under medical supervision. Additionally, Brigadier General Camilo Gapmai Kell remains hospitalized as he recuperates from an appendectomy. His recovery is progressing steadily under medical care. Due to their respective medical conditions, both SBLA-IO senior officers were unable to attend today's court session. The presiding judge, James Alala Deng, announced the adjournment of today's session to Friday, October 31st, 2025, instead of Wednesday, October 29th, 2025, without providing reasons. The SBLM/AIO reiterates its rejection of the so-called special court, which it views as a mechanism created to abrogate the revitalized agreement and to conduct a political witch hunt against Dr. RIEK Machar Tini Durgan and the SBLM/AIO. Consequently, it calls for the immediate and unconditional release of HE Dr. RIEK Machar, Tini Durgan, and all SBLM/IO detainees. Machar and 7 co-accused are on trial in a special court in Juba for their alleged involvement in the March 2025 incident in Nasir County, Upper Nile. Prosecutors accuse them of treason, murder, crimes against humanity, terrorism, and property destruction. The court has ruled that it has jurisdiction to try the case, rejecting preliminary objections that it lacked competence or that immunity protected Machar. Prosecution has begun presenting key documents and exhibits, including death certificates, witness/eyewitness lists, digital evidence, USB drives with video/audio, military and administrative orders, forensic reports from South Africa, etc. The defense is challenging the legitimacy of the court, the process, the admissibility of evidence, and raising issues of constitutional immunity, as well as arguing the case should fall under the mechanisms of the peace deal rather than normal criminal court. Transparency and media access have been restricted. Independent journalists have been blocked from covering the trial in some sessions. Observers and opposition groups warn this trial risks destabilizing the fragile peace process, since Machar is a major political actor, formerly rebel leader, part of the 2018 peace agreement, and the case is deeply entangled with ethnic/political fault lines. Key evidence and points of contention. Here are the major pieces of evidence and the disputed issues. Major evidence presented by prosecution: a death certificate for a senior military officer, e.g., General David Major Dak, and certificates for 256 soldiers killed in the Nasir incident. Lists of survivors/officers from Nasir, military administrative reports, orders for relief of forces, list of martyrs from the SSBDF. Digital evidence: USB drives containing videos and audio, forensic technical reports by South African experts, digital forensic analysis. Documents tying the accused, including Machar, to leadership or communications regarding the situation in Nasir, e.g., a letter by Machar dated March 1, 2025. Also a document regarding someone named Torgile Thoen, leader of White Army, being linked to the SPLMIO and to the incident. Major defense/legal challenges: Machar insists he has immunity as vice president, and that the investigation/court lacks proper mandate and legitimacy. Major defense/legal challenges: Machar insists he has immunity as vice president, and that the investigation/court lacks proper mandate and legitimacy. The defense argues that the case should fall under the peace agreement mechanisms, such as the hybrid court for South Sudan, rather than this special court. The court has already rejected this argument on jurisdiction. Challenges about admissibility of some digital evidence, e.g., video/audio, until experts testify. Questions about transparency, media access, and whether the process is free from executive/political interference. What about the session on October 27, 2025? According to one report from the Catholic Radio Network, October 27, 2025, the prosecution presented death certificates and official records confirming that more than 250 soldiers of the SSBDF were killed during the Nasir incident. The defense challenged that, requesting names of deceased soldiers. The prosecution said the documents were issued by the Ministry of Health and credible. The court admitted the death certificates and the list of survivors/officers from Nasir. Also admitted documents linking Torgile Thoen to the SPLMIO and White Army. The technical digital forensic report, South Africa, was deferred for admission until the experts appear to explain it. So in short, that session significantly advanced the prosecution case by securing admission of some core documentary evidence. The defense is pushing back on transparency, names, legitimacy. Why this matters, and risks. The trial pits a major figure from the 2018 peace deal, Machar, against the government, so it is extremely politically sensitive. The fact that the court has ruled it has jurisdiction despite objections is legally important. It sets precedent on accountability of high office holders and on whether peace deal mechanisms are being bypassed. Transparency concerns, media being blocked, restricted coverage, raise doubts about fairness of process. If perceived as unfair or politically motivated, the trial could further destabilize the fragile peace. The Nasir incident itself, alleged large-scale attack, many deaths, is grave. How the court handles evidence, chain of custody, admissibility, and defense rights will be watched internationally. The interplay between national courts and peace agreement mechanisms is being tested. How South Sudan handles this may affect its credibility with international partners, donors, etc. Dove Advocacy Report. 15th session of the sham trial of Dr. RIEK Machar and 7 other SPLM/ADO officials. Date: October 27, 2025. Venue: Freedom Hall, Juba. Compiled by Go Explore 251. 1. Overview: the 15th session of the politically motivated trial against Dr. RIEK Machar Teni Durgan, the suspended first vice president of South Sudan, and 7 other senior SPLM/ADO officials convened on Monday, October 27, 2025, at Freedom Hall, Juba. The session exposed deepening human rights concerns, including forced disappearances, unlawful detentions, and political interference in the judicial process. 2. Disappearance of key SPLM/AIO officers. Defense lawyer Kor Lul Kor informed the court that 4 senior officers of the SPLM/AIO, Brig General Mark Didi Yoa, Brig General Par Dang Yut, Brig General Kwok Dang Yil, and Major Hoth Chiok, have been missing since March 26, 2025, when security forces raided Dr. Machar's residence and placed him under house arrest. Despite repeated requests, neither the Ministry of Interior nor the National Security Service, NSS, has provided information about their whereabouts. The defense maintains that these officers were detained unlawfully and may have been subjected to enforced disappearance, a grave violation of South Sudan's constitution and international human rights law. 3. Cross-examination of lead investigator. During cross-examination, Major General Basilio Thomas Wani, the lead investigator into the so-called Nasir incident, faced sharp questioning over the legitimacy and independence of his investigation. Lawyer Kaur pressed the witness on whether he was aware that senior government officials publicly accused SPLM/AIO of orchestrating the Nasir assault before the investigation was officially launched. When asked specifically about statements made by Honorable Michael Makwe Luth, Minister of Information, Vice President Taban Dengai, General Johnson Olani Tabo, Vice President Benjamin Bolmel, and General James Koang Chol, the investigator claimed no knowledge of such comments. The defense argued that these pretrial pronouncements constitute prejudicial interference, undermining the presumption of innocence and the court's impartiality. 4. Political interference and due process violations. The defense team reiterated that the proceedings represent a gross miscarriage of justice, highlighting that the case was politically engineered to silence SPLM/AJO leadership. Detentions and disappearances of witnesses and allies have obstructed the defense's ability to present evidence. Public statements by government figures demonstrate that the verdict may have been predetermined. Such practices violate Article 19 of the Transitional Constitution of South Sudan, which guarantees fair trial rights, and contravene Article 14 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR. 5. Courtroom atmosphere. The hearing was tense and heavily militarized. Security personnel surrounded Freedom Hall, while journalists and observers faced restricted access. Defense counsel maintained a firm position that the court's integrity had been fatally compromised by executive overreach and intimidation of witnesses. Observers described the session as a clear indication that the process is less about justice and more about political theater. 6. Next steps. The court adjourned after cross-examination of Major General Basilio Wani. Judges are expected to deliberate on motions filed by the defense demanding immediate disclosure of the whereabouts of the missing 4 officers, independent investigation into their disappearance, and protection guarantees for remaining SPLM/AIO members and witnesses. The next session is anticipated to reconvene later this week, pending judicial review of the defense motions. 7. Advocacy calls human rights monitors and civil society organizations are urged to demand the immediate release or disclosure of the missing SPLM/AIO officers. Call for international observation of the ongoing trial to prevent further abuses. Press the government of South Sudan to uphold judicial independence and cease politically motivated prosecutions.
Mala Medilian Kadir Jelada te long katadin kalkane, Chenaban kia kalar yidini te paiban. Allah te ke tai chiro not an walla kishan ke janda rubaro. Ira look, Dr. My char ten durgan, a quar nyam, ki quaran gul quar nyam kasa Sudan ke lewu. Te kawar gang te to kawar gang sun konan kwai la gwen ke ya ka tun kona wike ichalat. Jan tega nega tin chala difan lo yer kene din chunko kida. Ke jin lo ke gwar wana tin chi chunko kid Dr. Ek. Arai ken ke kida an evident ke chana tin chano ko kika o an kwana Dr. Ek my sar gwen ke je ka kika kanama. Tim kwana charlat ka kida ka ne baro to ko kena gwen ke kelo no kane de ian. Chung jimone ke gwarmone tin chunka ka kai chunka na bumalong ka gang kan kwana Dr. My char no an Dr. My char kan nega dang baro tin chaka yen kan tala ka der mi de ka yen ka ya ke tala ka der mi de yen chop ko kan jano mechi to ka nasar edung de ne karo den kan jewet tala mugor kwana Dr. My char kan ne te kwana to ka juba tala mugor ka tanara mo na ma cha ka tin wan cha kwentin ka kon te chiwo cha ka mane kon diala awala dina ka chang an well didin chang well didin den cha kwentin awala ka te kon te cha lat ke chang ka well muan ke chang an well muan den a te cha lat ke chang well muan den ke evident te cha no ne ta kon no wan ka kwan Dr. M char kana ne dang baro ana nyuna ke tang te kan ganong tina kana goin kan kare my char an wala cha ka luch ka cha ka tich ka ken wo o kana me yen sia no je giana ne ka cha ramadan la do na ma mi se to la to ka ye jin cho kana tar cho kana o kana tar cha ne tan kon la do ka ai wi na ne cha ka tich ta jo jo no ta la ma ngai ka ne ka kwi ga man che to nei to kun let che o kene di cha jur ke ne di cha mo ke yo ko bi ka la mo be kana velat ban cha kap ne lo wale gar mo ne tin kon ne chung ke ko ne Dr. Kel che kana lag no o te ka troy ne dang wan ti cha ka bne wa de yan ko ne Dr. Me cha ke me yan di chang o ba te chang ke bo gwa re den troy ne troy cha kap ka gwa cha ka nang ten kana nga je gwa met cha ramadan go in kon Dr. Me cha ka gwarmon tum kona gwen ka kwana Dr. Me char charam ke ro iden chai tich aram me cha ti yan ti na ni cha ti je chai je no kwa ko to gwan ta ten da gwan men te de la ro kwi gwa ta ten cho la no kan kwa de alto ka ta don ka na ka ku ja gwan de ga ten de ga te ka ji security te kon de kap kana cha ka nyawa ti no ka wa te kap kana te ke ne dang wan ti cha kap pe jin cha nga kap kana ga ya ne to ka gang Dr. M char a ka ne no kona ta no poinde ne ton tamma ta la wa mi cha ga nyo no te ga ten mo da kwai ka wa den man tamma kan chiet ken pal ka ne do kona cha yen ne te kai security den te cha yen ka te jen kan ka pantan kan ga pari jina nda baro tin chayen tin te pot kan ga paldan kata laka ku Dr. M cha ka ken jaga nanga ne lawa kiyen antam mo me maloga nama ne totale ga ne dangwana tome ne dangwan cha chet ke lat ka ne na ke long ka ne de kon te kol ga da mai sav ala ne te kon ganga da jaga ti ne to de en wan dan de tin de en la ko ne tan to me cha kan chet ken pal ka ne do kon te kel ga pot kan ka che kan chit ken pal ka ne te jaluin te la security ne te je kal ga da me char mi yan ka gad me char ne kan gyot ken plano pal den ka kan pain ken kan ga pal ne to chi ga won ne ka ja ne do kon go inga na ja ga te ne to di ne lat gwa ga don chi go tan ja kan ta la mi se kana loiten chi kalaro qui ne loda de Teenage National Security Service kan de lot kana mo de kana nga jana ka kwija mo ka kiko talamishi kana loy ka tungkoni chaga tije ken wala te yo ya no roin tije kan galat chika kai ne kan dia chaga nyawa tid nyaw kano an investigation en la DNA kata andong chia talpone kwarn dokere mo char chaka peja kana laptop du melat keja amu menang yana ga South Africa ga South Africa kana wedan no South Sudan amu chile la mare no mare mo jegene ka mare de yan ngwa de yan de jaka South Africa o ba investigation ba laten mare mo bene ka enyo kya do nyo kam nyala no ene ka gwa de to go luka ya te ga mo te cha kwang ping ta la do no cha outside de cha ne de tra cha ga bunong warlo amuna len evident la len ka lo goro na ka South Africa ga ya ka ji kono mat pinye ne me to ko luga no cha ne te tra cha ka bu gor warlo ane chi un mi chale no yer mi chale professor Pulo Lumumba jaban ko de gan mi char de jaban difan jaya bulok ne tan kon la jai kena ACCUSER no jaru la ora no cha ne de ko kien outsider cha ka bu gor walok ne de kon ti ja di so Sudan cha ka gor no bi ka te ka nuga me anum ba tu be je so Sudan abikan ti dial bukan kan adajan amu milalian puane kana laptop nule kana puane ning another well pot control amu milalian ka jaka Sudan South Africa ka jamona en maran chikone jaka South Africa de yene nyot wargagde nyoda no South Sudan kana South Africa teka kamar madong de yan lada to de yan kalat kel gaja de yene nyot wargaga mo okay chocolate let chi mo de chan ne to me to kon nugane chalar lai chai to landam wala kanya tol tin dial to talami se kana lo cha tan ka talami se kana lo goda no na me atok do manana te jo ja no ti dial to let ken ka atol mune talami la to raiden ja kan talami se kana lo goda no na me atok o nana ka kwije mo ko cha kai te jo ja no wala kan du wala kan wo Tinaida kon tin going ka kon in salpo ke mai porni doctor ya mai char chiga kan ko bikan melato bikan loijok cha luk cha kap yok cha nan na ka chang ka bakel bulono Friday on that one ka pai wal cha luk ka kap yok no kan kwarlo ke judge chaga ti ka ti den ti lot ke no wala marana ke South Africa Malaysian kwak lelian kalajang no South Africa take investigation ba laten kame to kon nuga ne cha la de yan pain ku nuga tu ku no cha ne de tarar cha ka bugor ke ne de bawi no koken cha lo yer muno ko win mer den cha bugor e bo ba in bol ka lugan ma amulelian wargan kon lelian kan langa South Africa amuchila marana South Africa cha kan chige Chicken editorar, chicken di wizard den, Malelian, quack lelian galajang can bako la bako lenten. Kint roy chikuma, ke neda con la quarlock, chica pil ko becan galoite, the Georgiano deren yam nena de alcatar non chaga tiki. Kakuja macha luka kapkachanka bakel, mulon Friday, on 26 kapaiwan. On 27, on third one kapaiwan, one kinadang road de jandara with the dish. Mulonit coming Friday, mago cornin dang ro, kia cornin dang dog, bara young by now, luiten, capri dam wall, and kakuyamo ajan laram bacane, cabgayana wune, and diana link katonat, yeneda conon la dede, rajama decana link katonat, jantai chilu kerado narkejan walla. Tin ti cha ti ken dial ka tin ta kan lo ka gor ga yawan ho dong de ga ti nyok ka jan cha na mi nyok ko gor ke jan ba ka ignoch ka ku ja mo mi jira ma ka ro mat ka jan cha na lo ma gor jan o di ro mat ka jan cha na lo ma ko di jan cha na ma di ja gor ke di ja subscribe nyo bi ja nyo ka manu ko dial ko de kan ro mat ka jan cha na ma ko gur dien ka ja ko de kan lar dial la ne ka kam ya de kan kale ka ku ja ma chila da ta long liang ko dial Bune bun ke ye nyok ke ki general Dr. Nial Daniel Nial Daniel ti jen ke pade dung aswalem man bot ke akwar na salpa ke mayadit kata non ke jen ke ja ke ta ja kairar ke ja ke ta don ke tiai ke pade dung aswalem malarul ruling pade Chatting one along chakalat katan dam upado wekaja. Ano party a michipel chat the altar. Chakalat jan nagatogda. Chakalat ka Zoom meeting wa mitikeja and night to take a jakatong nan to bor. Aka chakalat bo ka paida. Aka Facebook like chakagor no. Dukton kon nyo do chi padded man chal as well Mambut ka kwano san pakia maya did me chapel gaja one chakalat kandial. Kuja ma binay nun ke ye a liapa ja an dugon e binay nong ye nya wa ko bia taga liang tin ye na ideal ko bia mandana la roda ka rei we ka sa Sudan bia taga liang mo ga ka kwide antama a kuma mandana mbot ke kwan san pa ke ma ya dit ke aspalem a den diawo ka perne ko kwanu da kare me char ta me sai dia ga no jan tana der gwan ke jaba a chitang no gwa dan dong ba loin ke ja kamu wai loin Biti di albukaro deri, kuja machelada tegalong liang kodial, katadong kel kane, abiatamat.